Welcome along, one and all. You are watching PSGL Season 38 PSF3 brought to you by GT Omega. This season's calendar takes us from one side of the globe to the other. It is a race in the States, and we are at COTA tonight. A personal favourite track of mine, so I cannot wait to see how these PSF drivers will attack this event. To take you through the action tonight, you have the esteemed commentary pairing of myself, Daka, who last week said we hadn't seen any crashes precisely 2 seconds before IRT Nick found the barriers, and alongside me is Ghost, who hopefully won't be cursed tonight. How are you, my friend?
Oh, it's my turn to curse someone today, Daka.
I believe so.
No, I'm doing well. It's been a good start to the season. We had an all-wet race last week in Australia, and here we are in America now. It looks dry for quali, but we'll see what it is when the race begins. But yeah, like you say, I think this is very much a Marmite track. A lot of people really like it, and a lot of people really hate it. I'm one of those. I've never been good at this track for some reason, but it's just never spoken to me. But I respect the track. I think it's a good one for racing, and it often produces some very good races. And let's hope it's another one of those today for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into it. As you said, I do think that people do tend to disagree on this circuit. So, we're going to get into qualifying, though. Let's see what order these guys are going to sort themselves out onto going ahead of this race. IRT Nick, we'll hope he can get through this session this time in the Williams, coming over the line to get things kicked off. IRT Nick kicks off this qualifying session. Let's see how he gets on.
Here we go, Nick into turn one, he goes down the brakes, and it turned in a little too early for the apex there, had to correct, and that'll have cost him at least half a tenth, if not more, through turn one, and now into the very tricky S section. Well, it used to be very tricky, it's now pretty much flat out, but now into the next part of the track. Now this is a tricky corner, very difficult to get the power down up here because of the camber difference, but Nick manages just about okay, and now into the second sector he goes down the gears into this. It can be tricky left hand to get the power down as well. I think that's a common theme for a lot of corners on this circuit, just getting the power down because of camber changes and just the track being too slippy. Now this long straight, we're going to see many overtakes here, and into the start of the final sector he goes in just a few corners time. There we go, 1 minute 1.075, and now so hard to get the power down through these corners too. Especially here, you're going to see a few lunges down the inside into that corner. I'm absolutely sure of that this race. And now triple right-hander flat out all the way through into the last couple of corners for IRT Nick. Easy to invalidate here, doesn't, but gets way too far on the curb. That will have probably lost some time in the final corner. Again, got to be very careful with the throttle, and across the line for 30.884 to start us off.
That is going to kick off this session. Let's see what the rest of the drivers can stack up to that. Provatox was half a second shy over the line himself. IRT Fleddy in the Mercedes goes fastest on a 0.5, so really good start for the Mercman. Let's see if there's anyone else that can challenge. Galaxy Slayer just gets into the 1 minute 30s, as does Lolo CGK in the Ferrari. But Fleddy's time, that seems to be an incredibly strong banker lap. Let's see if anyone else can challenge. Oh wow, look, it is the man who dominated last week's events, just pipping Fleddy, going a little bit quicker on a 1:35.14. Those two quite some way ahead of the rest of the field in this early stage of the session. There are a few invalidations. Spicer Vessel is coming around that final corner, gets a big slide on though, and that's going to be P6 on a 31 flat. Next up is going to be, well, I think the McLaren of Tom is midway through the lap. A couple of other drivers have invalidated, so Alex and Fleddy a long way clear. That 3/10 gap is very substantial, and well, Alex, you would say, kicking off where he left off from last week, but Fleddy breathing down the neck, and there are a lot of very quick drivers yet to really get involved, so this session, I imagine, is going to ignite in the minutes to come.
Yeah, Fleddy will be delighted with that he's so close to pole. He's been there or thereabouts the last few rounds, I would say, even if we go back to the final few rounds of last season. He was there or thereabouts in quali, and in the race He just didn't quite get the luck that he needed, or the racecraft, the consistency, whatever you want to call it, whatever went wrong. So he'll be hoping to get a decent first half of this season in to hopefully mount a title challenge for himself. But yeah, Alex Marciano, interestingly, it was Sector 3 where the Aston Martin man gained the most time. He was a tenth faster than everyone else in that final sector. So if you want to beat Alex Marciano, it's those last few tricky, twisty corners of the circuit where you've got to find the time at the moment.
And that last sector draws on incredibly detailed driving technique. It needs to be perfect. I'm on board with Napple here on the outlap. This corner, turn 15. Incredibly difficult braking zone. And I feel like that is at Kota where a lot of the lap time is. You mentioned the S section. I jumped into a little session earlier this week at Kota, and I could not believe how easy that section has become. It is extraordinarily fast. And ultimately, not a lot of time to be won or lost, but that last sector is going to be key in this qualifying session, which continues now with CPI Napple coming over the line in the Alpine. Let's see how this lap is going to go. You can see the reference times. 5 drivers have got into the 130s out of 12 who have set a lap time, but I do believe getting into the 130s, especially later in the session, is going to be a requirement for a good or even decent grid slot. So Napple now navigating that S sector. Of course, you do got to be careful with track limits here, though the game does allow you some leeway. 25.1's not particularly fast, gets a little bit offline too. In 2, turns 8 and 9, straightening up the car, getting onto the throttle yet again, looking downhill towards turn 11. The track changing all the time here, and you have to adapt your driving to that, locking up a little bit into one of the most important corners on the circuit because it sets up this monstrous back straight with DRS now open, and you'll get up to incredibly high speeds. They're well over 300 k's an hour, over 320 for Napple. DRS will flick back close as you get hard on the brakes into turn 12. Watch that middle sector time. It's a 101.6, and I would say not quite running at the speed that he quite needs in order to challenge some of the top drivers out there at the moment. Into turn 15, does manage to get in towards the curb, and then flying through this incredible triple apex right-hander, gearing up for the again very tricky last 2 corners, and gets too far over the curb at turn 18, the last of those, and ultimately bows out of the lap. So CPI Napple, nothing going there.
Oh, he's made a big mistake there. Tried to get into the pit lane and braked a little too late, possibly in frustration at such a careless invalidation. And yeah, he had to ignominiously reverse back into the pit lane again after nearly going back out onto the track. But yeah, no, you're right, that S section is just ridiculously easy to drive now. I said it was a tricky section just by instinct because it used to be, but now it's just flat through the entire section, and it's really only the last couple corners of sector 1 that are the difficult ones, and turn 1, of course, you can gain or lose an absolutely phenomenal amount of time in turn 1. All you need to do is do some time trial through turn 1 several times. You can drive it seemingly the same way every time and gain or lose a tenth or two every time. At least I can. I'm sure these drivers know exactly how to take that corner. But yeah, Alex Marciano currently on another lap. He is half a tenth up in sector 1, so he's looking to improve his already formidable provisional pole time. IRT Nick has invalidated further ahead, and IRT Fleddy's on a lap as well, but not improving in sector 1. He was a tenth down, and down he comes into sector 2. He's still going for this lap, so I wonder if he's gained some time since then. To the sector line he goes, and he has gained a 100th, but he's still just under a tenth down, so I don't think there's going to be an improvement from the Mercedes.
I've been watching NLR Spicer, who does go fastest, but only just, look at that, a 1:30.513, just fractionally fastest. Lolo, good lap, goes into the 0.5s as well, as does Spyro, so they are really queuing up then in that mid 130 range, really pushing the limits here. What about Alex Marciano? He is a quarter of a second up to these first 2 sectors, so this could be a superb lap time. Let's look at that entry to the final corner. The Galaxy Slayer goes fastest though, on a 30.3. P3. What can the Italian do? Goes fastest even still on a .2. The times are coming down rapidly inside 8 minutes in the session now, as I believe that was Provatox in the Kick Sauber goes 7th on a 130.8, just in front of debutant Suarez, who goes 100th of a second slower. Well, things are starting to get a bit more competitive out there in this middle phase of the qualifying session, and again it's Alex. There seems to be no one able to topple this man at the moment. I think that was Geppo, also another debutant in the Mercedes, going into P11 then on a 31 flat. The gap's fairly substantial here, really from sixth down, really, because of how technical this circuit is, and also being quite a long track too. But that constant, Alex Marciano on top once again. Again, it is not by a big margin, but it's enough to stay in front of everyone else, hold everyone else off, and really then everyone else just has to execute. It's a very difficult track to hook up a lap, but Alex Marciano seems to just be executing consistently on a higher level than the rest of this grid right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's that sector 3 that he just cannot be matched in at the moment. And at the current setup meta for this track, that is the most important sector, I believe, because this track has seen some differences in ideal setups over the years on the F1 games. It used to be that you had to go really low downforce on this circuit and sacrifice in the corners to have so much pace on the main straight. But in recent years, it's been more downforce oriented, and drivers have gone for higher wings to get that sector 3 better and sacrifice themselves in the straights. But of course, as everyone is doing the same thing, then you're not making that much of a sacrifice. So it's just been interesting to see how that's evolved over the years, and I'm sure most of these drivers will have high downforce setups. So yeah, Alex Marciano being fastest in sector 3 by a wide margin is a difficult pill to swallow for the drivers out there, because it means he's going to be even more formidable in race pace potentially.
Oh, I'm watching CPI Napple gets huge oversteer going into that final corner. Had a difficult qualifying session up to this point and is only in P15. Matisse comes over the line, goes right behind his teammate into P7 on a 130.774. We're just over 5 minutes to go in the session, so things are starting to hot up out there. I think Fleddy has just started a lap in the Mercedes. We're seeing a number of drivers out there, but we are still waiting for the bulk of the field to get going onto those final runs. So a lot of excitement is in front of us, folks, but Alex's time, we'll see if it's going to hold. Galaxy Slayer also close. Those two are a little way in front, but we saw how fast Fleddy was on the opening run. Nick is just invalidated, and it's at this point, as we so often see in the qualifying session, mistakes start to creep in as these drivers get closer and closer to the limit.
Fleddy right on the edge in sector 1, particularly on the exit of turn number 8 and through turn 9. He was really pushing through there, but he wasn't really far up in sector 1, so he needs to nail this latter section of the track now. He's coming down towards this slow left-hander after the long straight. If Ferrari gets in his way a little bit, that could have been a distraction, and he's 3.5 tenths down, so no improvement for Fleddy. I think he's bailed on that lap, of course, but I don't think he'll be particularly happy with that Ferrari getting in his way, but that is a matter for the stewards. That was Matisse, the Frenchman. But yeah, plenty of drivers in the pits at the moment, waiting for the right time to come out. 4 minutes to go in the session, so we'll see them all out fairly soon, as Slash invalidates at the penultimate corner once again, and still does not have a time on the board in that Williams, and he's going to have to rely on his last set of tyres to get something on, or he is going to be starting this race from last place.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on ML Slash at this point, currently 20th on the grid as it stands. Quiet track at the moment, the only car on the lap at the moment is Lolo CGK. Let's see how the Ferrari is going to get on. Of course, just 700ths of a second, and you're looking at getting onto that second row and looking potentially at P3 on the grid, even with just the minute improvements such as that. proximity of those cars from P3 to P6 at the moment. So let's see where Lolo is going to go. Getting out of turn 12, finding a little bit of oversteer. It's quick, but it's not massively quicker. So he needs a good last sector still. Gearing up for that final sector. Takes a wide entry into turn 15. Nice line through the apex. Gets good traction too, able to straighten up the car. Now, through these last few corners, turn 19 coming up is the critical one then. So easy to invalidate. No room for error on the turn end. Just keeps it within the white line, but is not happy. Goes into the pits and, well, maybe he did slip behind it on his Delta, but to me that looks like faith that he can get in, get new tyres on, and maybe go even faster down the line. But if he was actually up on his time, that's a big risk to take. So Lolo bailing out and is going to try and get back out again, but that's not going to have a huge amount of time to get sorted too. It's going to be kind of close.
Yeah, it's a big risk, this is, because not only is he bailing on a lap that looked pretty good, obviously he had the live Delta, so we can't tell from the commentary box, but yeah, if he was even slightly up on his time, he could have gained at least 1 or 2 positions in the standings at the moment, and with 2 minutes to go, he is cutting this very, very close. But most drivers now on out laps. Lakitu will be the first to attempt to set a lap of these last runs in the Aston Martin. He's coming through Sector 1 at the moment. He had a disappointing day last week, especially in qualifying. He was quite a way off the pace, but the race pace was better for the Aston Martin driver, and he was cruelly robbed of his first points in PSF3 in the last few corners of the final lap. So well, he ran out of fuel as well, but that's beside the point. He was very, very close to that 10th place. So here he comes now into Sector 2. He's again sitting last place of the drivers who've set times. So we'll see if he's improving as he comes to the end of Sector 2 now, down this long, long straight.
He did run very wide coming out of turn 9, just coming out of that first sector. Managed to get away without an invalidation, but I wonder what the time's going to be. He is up by just over 0.2 of a second. That would at least go in front of Zvidek in the Red Bull. Fighting a bit of oversteer though, heading through turn 14. Such a difficult traction zone, and again, such a difficult run through turn 15. This last sector we have emphasised so much throughout this session, how tricky it will be. Lakitu now heading in towards those final 2 corners, taking as much of the entry curve, heading into that penultimate corner as he can. Now here's the final corner then. Gear up, get as good an exit as you can, punch out to the line. It is going to be P17 on a 131.3, still the qualifying pace, not coming towards Lakitu, and we turn our attention to the rest of the drivers who look to try and put in the best laps they can. 20 seconds left in the session. I'm watching Lolo in that Ferrari coming up towards the line. Probatox in front is certainly going to make it. Lolo track extending massively out of turn 19. I think that may need to be looked at. Is he going to make it to the line though? 3, 2, does just about get over the line. Wow. And we'll get our final run in here in this qualifying session, which is about to come to a head.
Yeah, all the top 3 improving right now. Spicer will be the first to set a time out of those top 3. But interestingly, IRT Nick, who's currently sitting down in 12th, has just gone purple in Sector 1. So we'll see what he can do. But Spicer coming to the line. Final corner for the McLaren driver, who was so close to second place last week. He improves, but it's not enough to challenge the top 2. What about Galaxy Slayer? Invalidated for the VCARB driver. Alex Marciano, the championship leader, the winner from last week. What can he do? Can he get himself on pole this week? Through the final corner he goes. DRS open, is it an improvement? Yes! Huge improvement from the Aston Martin, up by 0.2 of 30.0. Can anyone challenge that? Nick is down in Sector 2, so that first sector that was so mighty, not come to bear. Fleddy, no improvement. I think he invalidated, so Lolo coming through. Provatox as well in the Sauber just ahead. He's coming through the final sector, and that was an improvement for IRT Nick, but it's only enough for P7 as the last few laps come in. Oh, Provatox into the barrier. Yeah, into the barrier all the way at the triple right-hander. I'm not sure how that happened. I think maybe he just gave up on the lap, and Lolo has done the same as he goes extremely wide at the penultimate corner of turn 19, and that is game over for this quali session. Alex Marciano with an absolutely dominant pole position.
That is a huge margin. Look at that. Galaxy Slayer's time, nothing to scoff at too. Fleddy in P4, you do wonder, was there more pace? That lap time was set very early on in qualifying. On the very first lap he did, but Alex Marciano, yeah, that is a scorcher and continues to just assert himself on PSF3 with a 130 flat. That is well, I would say faster than I expected the pole time to be, and quite dominantly ahead of the rest. So Alex Marciano, perfect season up to this point. Of course, last time out in Australia, won the race, also got pole position and fastest lap, and by a margin of a quarter of a second, has another pole position over Galaxy Slayer and the RB Spicer. And third position then, sharing that second row with Fleddy behind that, Spyros and Lolo. Next, that fourth row is going to be made up of Nick and Geppo, then Matisse and Napple. Rounding out that top 10 behind that is the Dutchman Probatox, sharing that sixth row with Suarez, then Vessel and Tom come next ahead of Zvidek, Vaimaranvi, Moikuli, Lakitu, and then Triska and Slash unable to set a time. Well, it is always a tough qualifying session around here at Kota. Unusually big gaps for PSF3, which I think is a natural consequence of the track. We look forward to the Grand Prix of Texas very, very soon. Of course, please ignore this a mock start. We're just getting the lobby reset. But yeah, that was scorching from Alex Marciano, and such, again, another massive psychological blow. He won last week's race by a margin of 22 seconds. And, well, if we get another wet race, there's no reason why you can't do that again. There is just so much incredible speed, and it looks like a massive uphill battle for everyone else at the moment.
Yeah, Vaimaranvi in the paddock saying that he honestly I don't know how to do that time, and I think his thoughts will be shared by the rest of the grid, I'm sure, because that is a massive pole margin in a division that's been so close since I've started commentating here in PSF3. All the qualifying sessions have been mighty tight, and yeah, Alex Marciano just blowing everyone out the water. And well, in the interest of a neutral commentator, I hope he doesn't win the race by a similar margin again, but certainly if you're an Alex Marciano fan, you'll be hoping he does exactly that.
You certainly will. We will get that race going for you not too long from now, so please do stick around. So we're going to have a little bit of downtime to discuss, well, how racing tends to happen here at Kota. I do, as I said at the start of the stream, I do love this track. I love it to drive, and I also love it to watch. That third sector for me is just a complete masterclass in track design. The way it allows cars to battle endlessly. Really, you see from that hairpin at turn 12 down to really down to the triple apex corners of 16, 17, and 18. You see battles that last all the way throughout this section because of how raceable it is, and I think you're going to see a lot of that too with this spread. I expect the drivers to really go out. We talk about Sector 3 endlessly up to this point in the stream, but I think that is going to be pivotal, as it was in qualifying, in the race in terms of sorting those battles.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's certainly going to be a matter of DRS because around here, I mean, in general on this game, the DRS trains are extremely powerful, but on a track with a straight as long as this one, from the exit of turn 11 all the way down to 12, it's so important to stay in that range, because if you fall out of the range of, say, the race leader, then he has all of Sector 3 to just build that gap, especially if you're battling with a car behind in the meantime. And yeah, it can be very difficult. So it's all going to be about staying within that 1 second range for the cars behind. But Alex Marciano is going to try his best to make that as difficult as possible.
In pure drive racing, you rarely see that happening. One car just breaking away from the rest. We'll see if the rest of the grid is able to hang on in there. So that will be very, very soon. Also, on a note of strategy, Kota's fairly simple from my perspective, it seems like. Drivers like to start on the hards here. The medium's very, very strong at the end of the race, and you don't want to be defending against that. So certainly from the PSGL races through the week that I've seen, almost everyone starts on the hard tyre here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd be surprised to see more than a quarter of the grid starting on the mediums, and it may very well be the entire grid starting on hards, because it's like you say, the mediums are just far too strong at the end, and then surprisingly weak at the beginning of the race with high fuel. They just don't really have the same kick as they do towards the end of the race. And so if you start on the mediums, you're not going to gain that much in the start of the race, and then you're going to be on the hards later on with everyone else on the mediums. You'll get a very nice undercut, but it's not going to be enough, and the mediums will just chase you down well before the end. So I'd be surprised to see many people starting on the mediums here.
Yep, same from my perspective. So, as we have a bit of downtime, I'll just take you through PSGL's sponsors, because PSGL is sponsored by GT Omega. And as always, of course, a link to their site is in the video description. If you decide to purchase any of their products, then you can use the code PSGL at checkout for a 5% discount. We are also partnered with Sim Racing Centre, SRC for short. If you're in need of setups or coaching on the F1 game, then SRC is the place to go. They are also in the video description, and there's a 10% discount on all their products at checkout using the code PSGL. So, let's get focused on this race. Lobby's updated, so we should get right back into the action very, very soon. We will see if, of course, it is going to be another wet race like we had in Australia. I don't believe that we commentated on any wet races last season, but of course we had one to start the season in Australia. It is possible here, but I would say more unlikely than in Australia for sure.
Yeah, I'd say so as well. I mean, if you know anything about Texas in general, it's especially at the time of year that they have the race, and the F1 games with the dynamic weather setting, they tend to be reasonably accurate in terms of how the weather would likely be in real life. Yes, for example, you'll very, very rarely see rain in Qatar, for example. But yeah, no, I've seen rain in Texas quite a few times over the years. Despite that, so you never know. We could get another one today. But yeah, I think Alex Marciano, given his pace last week in the wet, would be perfectly happy to see that. But we shall see. It looks like everyone's readying up now, so it won't be long until we find out.
Wouldn't be long at all. Also, another driver, of course, up until that crash late in the race, was also flying in the wet conditions, was Spicer. Spicer is starting third on the grid, so will certainly, I imagine, not mind that position either. Starting immediately behind Galaxy Slayer, joining Alex Marciano on the front row. So that is the tail of the tape going into the Grand Prix, which we are just loading into now. So cannot wait to see how things are going to unfold. Just as a side note, the admin of PSF3 NLR Tom has, well, the coordinator, I should say, not the admin, has stated that we're going to be starting at 34 minutes past the hour, which is just under 4 minutes from now. So we will have a little bit of downtime. That did confuse both myself and Ghost last week, but yes, so we will have just a little break before we do actually get racing. But I'm sure it's going to be worth it when we get there. 28 laps of the Circuit of the Americas is in front of us, and well, how many ways could this race unfold? I wonder, Ghost. We talked about how that DRS down the straight, if it is a dry race, I do have to keep bringing that up right until we do eventually see what condition the track is in. Well, there is barely a cloud in the sky, so I don't think rain is a discussion that we are going to be having later on. So we just have a little bit of a wait before we get into it. I want to talk about the race start though. Turn one at Kota is a tricky one, it must be said, when you have 20 cars barreling down towards it, heading up that steep uphill rise. It's so wide on the entry, and then you get such a pinch point at the apex. I do trust the drivers here immensely, but that is difficult to race with a huge pack of cars. The way it all condenses itself into the well, kind of almost like a funneling effect in towards turn one.
Well, we've seen it in real F1 the last few years, incidents at turn one on this circuit. We've obviously last week or a couple of weeks ago with the top two in the championship running each other wide. Well, I say each other, but you know. But no, and then we saw George Russell taking out Carlos Sainz as well on the entry. So you know, if it can happen to the professionals driving the real cars, it can definitely happen in a simulated league race. So yeah, I do wonder. I'm sure the drivers are perfectly capable of making it through safely, but lap one, 20 cars on the grid, weird things can happen.
They can indeed. Let's see what weird things are going to go down as we get ready with 5 laps. And it's 5 laps, and away we go for the Grand Prix of Texas. Alex Marciano leads away from Galaxy Slayer, immediately swipes across the nose of the RB to take possession into turn 1, and Galaxy Slayer has no way through. Up the inside is Fleddy on Spicer, and they all get through relatively cleanly in the end. Spicer and Fleddy battling away for that third place. Fleddy getting edged out. Eventually the McLaren is able to get back in front. They run relatively single file amongst the top 10 and a bit side by side outside of the top 10 through that S section. Gradually they sort themselves out, and a remarkably clean start here at the US Grand Prix. So let's get focused on the action with Alex Marciano still leading, Galaxy Slayer behind, and Spicer piling on the pressure in third position at the moment, and Fleddy looking up the inside too. These guys getting awfully up close and personal. Lolo's been forced wide, nearly spins across the track, manages to save it in the end. We've got a bit of a break though in the train, which may actually be plugged by Lolo running wide. Matisse lost contact with the rest of the cars in front, trying to hold them off as go for the lead. Galaxy Slayer looks to the outside, no way through at the moment. It's manic behind. I do not know where to look at this stage. Galaxy Slayer is trying to fend off NLR Spicer too, heading up towards turn 15. Spicer doesn't try to for the lunge. Fleddy has a little look, gets the nose in there but can't quite follow through, as further back they are still battling the two Haas's too. Vettel and Suarez going at it, and at the back too, Slash and Zvidek. Eventually they all seem to settle down, with Alex Marciano still leading. Did come under pressure and they are still scrapping away behind it. Does not want to calm down, but the Aston Martin still leads.
Galaxy Slayer using all his ERS to pile the pressure onto Alex Marciano. He knew he wanted to get past before Sector 3. He may have known that Alex Marciano was strong in that sector, and he was absolutely right to think that, because you saw the gap that the Aston Martin pulled in that final sector on that first lap. It was huge, and so Galaxy Slayer, he had the right idea, but he couldn't quite pull it off, and through the S's they go again, and well, the top 5 staying in order for now. Galaxy Slayer cutting across that curb on the in that corner in the S's. That could well have been a track limits warning already. I'm sure we'll see plenty of those today. Don't be surprised if they decide some important decisions, track limits penalties today. But yeah, those top 5 still in order, and then a lot of position changes further back. In the first sector we had pretty much everyone staying in order. They were very well behaved in turn 1, and then since turn 1 they they all decided it was time to go for it, and changes across the board now. But the most positions gained by Lakitu, who's up 5 from P18 to 13, but up 4 for Triska and Slash as well. Good starts for the two drivers who didn't manage to set lap times in quali. Spicer dives down the inside of Galaxy Slayer as predicted earlier at turn 15. A courageous move from the McLaren. It's worked out beautifully. He's up to P2. Nothing the V-Carb could do about it, and now he goes chasing after Alex Marciano, but he's crucially got to stay within 1 second. He has done for now. He's going to get DRS down to turn 1, but it's not too effective down to turn 1. It's really the burst down to turn 12 that he really needs.
That first sector is going to be so crucial. Fleddy lunges Galaxy Slayer too, goes deep on the entry, overshoots the corner. Galaxy Slayer comes back on the exit. They get so close, and the RB does manage to reclaim that third position ahead of the Mercedes. Behind is Spyros. Spyros has decided to start on the mediums. 5 drivers have elected to do so, and he is by far the best placed of those drivers. We said the mediums aren't so good at the start of the race. Can Spyros go against that trend, buck that trend? Staring down Fleddy, who has been in the wars so far, tried to get through on Galaxy Slayer, couldn't quite do so. Spicer has managed to stay with Alex Marciano, and Fleddy's lunge on Galaxy Slayer has put them both in a bit more pressure. So now down the straight, Spicer will be able to claw his way back towards Alex Marciano. Marciano by a couple of tenths of a second. Spyros trying to close down Fleddy, unable to do so. The top 6 beginning to break away from the rest of the field. Provotox being moved through by Matisse, and now Lolo trying to get through. Lolo goes very late on the brakes, rear locks going into turn 12, manages to save it. There was a bit of contact in there from the rear, from the Mercedes of Geppo, and Lolo does in the end manage to rearrange that car and seemingly not quite getting damage, but that was so ambitious, and Geppo lunges again in that Mercedes, can't quite find the way through on that occasion, and now Tom in the McLaren threads the needle on the inside of turn 16 and looks to get through. It is manic further down the order, but they are leaking time to the top 7. That gap 2.5 seconds from 7th to 8th. It's glorious battling from these guys, but they have thoroughly detached themselves from the race leaders.
Yeah, Lakitu and Triska were going wheel to wheel throughout the entire final sector, pretty much. Triska with an audacious move, just like the one that Spicer pulled on Galaxy Slayer, as he has a little spin through turn 1, though, and now he's going to be under pressure from the Aston Martin once again. Yeah, not quite enough. Lakitu, I believe, was in F2 last season, so he's come down to F3, and I think he certainly belongs here. Much better this season, although still struggling through that first sector. And Vessel right back at him in the Haas, down the inside, down towards turn 11 he goes. Lakitu breaks late and forces Vessel to take a compromised line, and he keeps the position. Great stuff from the Aston Martin, but he does seem to be struggling out there as Galaxy Slayer, another one who's been shipping positions since the start. He is down to P4 now. Fleddy getting past him in the DRS zone after they've all lost that 1 second range to the top 2. Spicer and Alex Marciano have gotten away. Spicer crucially has managed to recharge his ERS. He was on barely any, pretty much 0 at this point last lap, but here he is now. He's managed to recharge and he's staying with the Aston Martin. So great stuff from the McLaren driver as he looks to challenge the runaway race winner from last week.
Oh, big oversteer heading out of that final corner. Of course, they got into it a little bit in Australia, while Spicer was about 4 to 5 seconds back for the duration of the race, tried to match Alex Marciano's pace. Now he stares down the rear wing of that Aston Martin, and the two of them begin to gap the rest of the field with superlative race pace. Fleddy and Galaxy Slayer have been unable to follow up to this point. Fleddy, of course, maybe you could say not quite taking the opportunity to get through a couple of laps ago with that move into turn 1, gets it right the second time round, now tries to break clear, but I think these guys have got to work together more than anything else, try and reel in that top 2. I think Spicer will be content just following for the time being, as they will try and build a gap to the drivers behind as Vessel picks up a time penalty. We're seeing penalties galore already as Nick gets through on Spyros, in towards turn 11, gets through on the Red Bull driver, who's not going to be happy at all. Gets on the overtake button a bit, but Nick is going to be able to pull away, I think, and secure that 5th position. So Nick making that move, a bold one on Spyros, and now to the inside. Galaxy Slayer takes that podium position back from Fleddy. Fleddy right up behind him going into turn 13, decides to bide his time and wait another day to fight that battle, but all the while the gap continues to extend. It is over 2 seconds now, and the field is splitting into 3 here. Triska in the Alpine making moves. Geppo in the Mercedes lunges back, nearly does run into Tom, and there's contact again, and I think Triska might have gotten front wing damage from that. Doesn't seem to be any cosmetically, but he's round the outside of turn 16, 17 and 18, the inside of turn 19, trying to use that medium grip, and does get through in the end, sticking that move and getting up in a 12th position. Triska on the move again and again. Fleddy, Galaxy Slayer duel, and here comes Nick too. Nick to the inside of turn 1 does get himself into 4th position, and Galaxy Slayer losing 2 positions in 1 instance. Back down into P5. It's not been a good start to this race. Fleddy now runs up into position number 3 at the head of the train. It's almost impossible to maintain that position, so we're seeing constant battling, constant racing. We're just over 5 laps in. This has been exhausting to watch up to this point.
Oh, this is brilliant. Yeah, you're right, the field is split into 3 at the moment. We've got the top 2 and then all the way down to 7th, and then the rest of the field all in a long DRS train led by Lolo in the Ferrari at the moment. But all these, there's so many close calls already in just 5.5 laps to some big incidents that could have happened. And you'd usually say it's only a matter of time with this kind of racing as Nick gets past Fleddy. Galaxy Slayer looks to follow him through. Oh, a little bit close to the ragged edge on the exit of turn 12, but they've just about gotten away with it, and Fleddy stays ahead of the V-Carbon, sends it down the inside as well of Nick. There's going to be plenty of those moves at that particular corner this race, but it doesn't pay off this time, and Nick stays ahead, but the gap has grown to 3 seconds to the top two as there's an incident behind, and I was just saying it's a matter of time, and we've seen Slash and Gippo both round, Slash into the wall, and well, I was going to say, usually you'd say it's only a matter of time, but with this brilliant field, they might be able to keep it clean for the whole race, but Slash and Gippo unfortunately coming a cropper there on lap 6 as Fleddy makes his way back into P3 after a good move into turn 1. Matisse and Tom side by side further back through the same corner, but Matisse stays ahead. They're still side by side through the S's though for P10. It's the last point on the standings as well, and Tom shuts the door in the Ferrari's face and gets his way into that 10th place. But the fight continues as now the field is splitting ever more, Daka.
There doesn't seem to be any intentions of pulling back gaps for this third place train and also the 8th place train. They are just going to war, and there's nothing that anyone else can do as Spicer moves through on Alex Marciano. That looked fairly premeditated, but behind this is not. Look at this, as out of the slipstream comes Nick and Galaxy Slayer down the inside too. Nick locks up and Galaxy Slayer gets up and alongside, heading in towards turn 13. Nick's going to try and cover that one off, and Fleddy is still in there. Fleddy to the inside line. Now it's going to turn to the outside though, heading into turn 15. Wide goes Nick. Fleddy gets boxed in. Galaxy Slayer gets caught up on the inside line. Spyros goes through. Napple is dropped back too in the Alpine. And they managed to reset themselves, I think, without much disaster, much loss for any of these cars. They continue to run out there, but they are just relentlessly battling. And I'm with you, this cannot be sustained, surely. With Nick now at the head of this train, he's managed to work his way through. And actually, these guys are battling so hard that it may even allow, before long, if this 8th place train gets the rack together, to be able to close themselves back up, because the gap is stabilised here at the very least. And, well, this third place battle, they are clearly treating it like that, like a battle. There is no concern for the long game. They are going at it, and it could allow this train back into it. These guys really are just not letting up and just knocking themselves to pieces. It's extraordinary racing back here.
Yeah, that kerfuffle at turn 15 in particular on the previous lap, they all lost well over a second to Provatox as a result of that, and the gap has only come down even further, another half second in Sector 1. Provatox is flying in that Kick Sauber at the moment as the top two swap once again. I think we're going to start seeing plenty more of that in the coming laps as they work together to increase the gap to the cars behind. Spicer and Alex Marciano well ahead of everyone else at the moment. Provatox though gets swamped by Lolo and Tom down to turn 12. Nothing he can do about it, and the gap has now back increased to 2.4, 2.5 to the cars ahead. Provatox having a little cheeky look around the outside there through turns 13 and 14, but not quite getting it to work through 15, and has to stay down there in P10. But the battle rages on in the midfield, and well, they've got to keep an eye on the long game here, because Napple and Co ahead of him, that gap is ever decreasing. 1.9 now it comes down to once again, and if they work together, they could well find themselves back in the train for P3 here.
Yeah, these guys are really not travelling very fast at the moment, and that gap is now under 2 seconds, so keep an eye out then. Nick leading away. He's managed to, I think he does have a bit more race pace, at least in this first stint, than the other drivers in this train, and he is able to stay in front, as Spicer in second place gets a time penalty. You mentioned earlier how much of a role that may play in this Texas race, and we are seeing that already. Spicer, who is up there battling for the lead with Alex Marciano, picks up a 3 seconds. We'll see if Alex Marciano is going to follow suit, or any of the other drivers in the top 10. It's actually the drivers outside the top 10 generally that have picked up the penalties, but Spicer getting one, and that could be crucial. We'll see if it is going to turn out that way as the third place group careens towards turn number 11, and to the inside goes Galaxy Slayer. Galaxy Slayer trying to get one of those places back, squeezes Spyros right onto the curb, but Spyros does not yield and battles on and fights on the inside of turn number 13. Galaxy Slayer, though, with better traction around the outside, gets the inside now into turn 15, and I think will complete that manoeuvre, gets back up into 5th place, and Spyros down into 6th. But you do wonder, Spyros, what kind of role he's going to play. He's comfortably clear of the other medium runners, still running out there going strongly, and you do wonder if he can just hang in there, not lose too much from the undercut. He's gonna come in straight away, go on to the hard tyres, and we'll see how well this undercut's going to work. He was very cautious on that pit entry, but Spyros gets off the mediums quite early. He's going to go onto the hards. We'll see how much that undercut is going to be worth, and if he can try and steal a march, because I think those mediums at the end, we alluded to it earlier, but they're going to be very fast.
1.6 now the gap has come down to. It was down as far as 1.2 at the end of the previous lap, but Tom nearly lost the car through turn 19 and lost a few tenths again to that pack ahead, and now back up to 1.8, but it's in the middle and final sectors where the chasing pack gains the most time here, and once again Tom gaining a ton of time through turns 7, 8 and 9. He seems the chasing pack seems to be better at that than the pack ahead. I think probably because they're having to slow down more for the cars ahead, and whereas the lead driver of the chasing pack can just go flat out through there as fast as they can. But the DRS here once again, Galaxy Slayer and Fleddy battling. Lolo getting past Tom further back, but the chasing pack working together better to try and catch the pack ahead, as the pack ahead are with keeping them behind. They're more interested in battling each other and not really paying too much attention behind. And
contact in a turn 15. It's Vessel and Matisse have gone into contact, and the Ferrari has gone into a half spin and lost several seconds back there. Rejoined side by side with Suarez, who does have front wing damage in that Haas, gets through in the end in the 14th position. Not sure where that front wing damage has been picked up by Suarez. Lakitu gets a time penalty. So many time penalties further back down the field. Triska's come in off of that medium tyre, as has Viaday, but it's all kicked off further back, and another break in the train after Vessel and Matisse getting into contact. Lolo now with a time penalty. These time penalties are flying in at the moment. Vimaranvi and Lakitu swapping places. I think Vimaranvi went deep in Lakitu, fights back, and then Aston Martin gets to the inside line and gets through, as now Nick in third place gets a penalty. This is absolute madness. Now the man at the head of the third place train picks up a time penalty. That's going to lose him out to several of the cars behind. Ghost, I don't know what's going on anymore. I can barely commentate this race. It is just mayhem out there, and this race situation is just ever evolving.
Well, I knew track limits would play a major part in this race as Spicer and Alex Marciano swap again and Galaxy Slayer into P3, but I didn't think we'd quite have this many this early in the race. Tom getting past Lolo, those two swapping again as well, as Moikuli becomes the latest victim of the white lines. Suarez and Lakitu battling again for P12, and well, I will say Suarez has had that front wing damage for quite a while. I noticed it on the telemetry very early on in this race, so he's been nursing that pretty much all race long in that Haas. So I wonder if he'll get it repaired in the pits, or if he'll just choose to fight it out as the race goes on, unless we get a safety car in this one. But yeah, a lot of battling happening, and look at the gap now between 6 and 7, 1.1 seconds, and Tom knows it. He's using the ERS down to turn 1. He knows it's crucial now. If he can get in the DRS before those hard tyre pit stops start rolling in, he's going to be in a great position. Here he is, 0.9. Can he stay there, though, as the detection point is just on the exit of turn 10?
Let's keep an eye out on this then, as the McLaren then filtering through. Napple, though, I imagine, is equally aware of that. In 6th position, closes up to the back of Fleddy, has plenty more battery to use. Tom, through this section, turn 8 and 9, is very, very good, and it looks like he's comfortably going to be in then. So this third place group just got 3 new members. Tom, Lolo and Provatox all contributing to that chase and getting themselves back on. Great work from those guys. As the leaders swap again fairly undramatically, they are just running away with things. 7 seconds clear at the front of this field, and I think that I think there is just a race pace gap, and that's why. Oh! Sneak it to the back of Galaxy Slayer, and that is damage on the Williams then. In the braking zone to turn 11, IRT Nick coming a cropper there, and is going to be massively hindered by that, I imagine, through this final sector. So IRT Nick understeering in a turn. Number 15, Fleddy, was nearly into the back of him in the Mercedes, but Galaxy Slayer getting hit in the back. Nothing, I don't think he did wrong there, but Nick unfortunately suffering with the damage. Turn 19 is going to be one of the worst corners of all. Is it going to be a swift pit stop? No, he's going to stay out and try and brave it out on this front wing damage and extend to the point where you can pit off of the hards and onto the mediums, which will be in a few laps time, around about lap 16, I do think. So Nick with a bit of a better blow, and the question is, do you repair that damage? We'll see the answer to that later on. Lakito pits off the mediums, I think the last driver to come off of those, as Vimoranvi moves through on Suarez, but these guys have been further detached from the rest of the field now, as Vimoranvi and Suarez nearly coming to blows on the exit of turn 1-2. So they continue to battle in that third place now with a couple more cars. Napple is all over the back of Fleddy, and Galaxy Slayer beginning to gap Nick, who is really suffering with that damage now.
Yeah, I was watching him through sector 1, and he really struggled with turn 7, and that's where he lost all the time. And now 1.2, he's lost the DRS, and Fleddy's got to push now because he needs to get back in the 1 second range of Galaxy Slayer, lest he risk the VCARB driver starting to pull away. But Fleddy gets past, Napple follows him through. They know now it's crucial to get past that Williams. They've probably worked out by now that he has damage. Fleddy, though, gets a 3-second time penalty, and Nick sends it down the inside. Wing damage or not, he has not lost his racing instincts, and he makes the move, but he gets absolutely swept through turn 15. But he's back on the inside through the triple right-hander. Can Napple sweep around the outside? He'll have the inside for turn 19. Can he make it work? They're going to go side by side through the last two corners. There's contact, and Nick is sent off the circuit. He will not be happy. Napple stays ahead, and more contact on the exit of turn 20 as well, as they hurtle down towards turn 1. It is chaos in the mid-pack here, and this is all helping Fleddy and Galaxy Slayer, who've now built quite a gap, and they're going to continue to as Tom goes side by side with Napple now. The McLaren driver makes his way through. Brilliant move from Tom, and this is looking like a great day for McLaren at the moment.
NLR Tom, how many positions is that up, I wonder, in this race up to this point? Up 9 spots. That is an incredible drive up to this point for the McLaren man, the PSF5 champion from last season, now chasing down IRT Fleddy. The Galaxy Slayer has managed to, of course, assert that third place and hold it all for himself, and we know the qualifying pace he had as Lolo gets through on Nick with a feisty move into turn number 11. Nick goes for a massive switchback, trying to get alongside the Ferrari. You cannot fault the fighting spirit. He is not backing down from anyone, but ultimately the lack of downforce just working against him. Tom sweeps past Fleddy again and moves up into 4th place. Fleddy picked up a time penalty on the last lap here at turn 11 after overshooting, so Tom up another place into 4th position. That is 10 spots in this race, and now we've seen how much race pace he has and able to chase down this 3rd place train earlier, and now can he chase down the 3rd place man in isolation, Galaxy Slayer? So NLR Tom getting onto it now. He's going to continue to push. 1.6 seconds the gap to the VCARB in front. We're getting near that pit window though to get onto the mediums off of the hards, and looks like Fleddy is going to dive into the pits. So the Mercedes, he's also got front wing damage, comes in, as does Lolo, as does Nick. So these 3 drivers coming into the pits, getting that final stint underway, and we'll see if they can try and reassert themselves in this race with fresh mediums on.
A new front wing is ready for the Mercedes of IRT Fleddy, so now he's got a lot of time to make up on those mediums. He's come in for an early stop. He wants the undercut, and he wants to replace that front wing because he's probably seen how much time Nick has been losing. Nick comes out as well on the mediums, pitting in the same lap. Has he got a new front wing on that Williams? I can't quite tell yet. It looks like it. Yeah, he certainly does as he goes through turn 1. That is all repaired. So Fleddy and Nick on the back foot now, and they've come out behind this train of hard tyre runners, which they're not going to be too happy about. And Alex Marciano and Spicer once again swapping. They're being very friendly to each other at the front of the field at the moment. And in particular, I imagine Alex Marciano is very happy to be friendly to Spicer, given that the McLaren driver has himself a 3-second penalty.
Yeah, that plays massively to the advantage of the current championship leader. And I imagine he's happy to trade with NLR Spicer all night long. As through further back goes Nick and Fleddy. They got through on Moy Cooley then. That's one position out the way, but that outlap is being heavily compromised. And, well, if these guys are in the pit window on the fresh hards of the guys that haven't pitted yet, well, let's see how that's going to impact things. RT Nick picks up a time penalty. How much is that going to affect things? Fleddy lunges Viaduct in the Red Bull, who's forced onto the outside line now. I imagine Nick's going to try and follow through. Yes, he does. Goes late to the inside of turn at 15. Thankfully, fresh grip from the mediums working well, but Viaduct is not going to give it up and fights back. Gets inside. Nick trying to switch it back. Heading through turn 18 now. He's going to be on the outside for turn 19. Gets around the outside. IRT Nick through in his 16th position. That was brave. No doubt about that from the Williams, chasing down IRT Fleddy, trying to recover after the front wing damage. We have a myriad of cars who have gone into the pit lane though and emerging. Weimaran be losing out a little bit. Vessel is going to come out right in the midst of this fight, comes out just in front of Viaduct. That was critical, able to squeeze through on the Red Bull and now has a clear run at Fleddy and Nick in front of him. So Vessel getting out in a good spot and is going to try and hunt down Fleddy and Nick thereafter. Tom and Napple came in. They've managed to emerge clear of that train. Lolo, who came in a lap earlier, gets in front of those guys in the Ferrari, so now running in P9, and they've got Triska to contend with in the Alpine, running all on his own in position number 8, having come in for a big undercut earlier on. So Lolo and Tom will, I imagine, try and make light work of the Dutchman in front. Then Lolo is going to pull out. The slipstream is going to get through, and Tom is not quite going to be able to follow through as, whoa, Lolo massively overshoots in a turn 11, and back comes Triska now. To the inside goes the Ferrari, and Triska has to dive out of the way as the Ferrari came lunging in there. Tom is going to try and follow through. Triska again lunges, not looking to back down, and has no right to, forces Lolo right to the outer regions of the track. Now through goes the Ferrari, I think, finally, with a bit of a block pass. Now Tom trying to find a way through. There's nothing doing then into turn 19 and has to wait a little bit longer. Triska getting feisty then and holding Lolo and Tom back, and the fresh median runners have not been able to make best use of it so far. You'd have to say Galaxy Slayer and Provatox have come in. Tom will draw alongside Triska on the main straight, is going to get through, I imagine, without much difficulty into turn 1, moves up into P7. Galaxy Slayer emerges right behind, so the undercut has worked for Lolo and Tom. They have nevertheless managed to get in front of Galaxy Slayer, so now Galaxy Slayer, who was comfortably running in that net third place, now has some work to do and has a hard runner too in between himself and NLR Tom.
Yeah, the Spanish driver will not be happy with that, Galaxy Slayer. He had a comfortable gap. It was nearly 2 seconds the gap he had to Tom, and now here he is behind the McLaren driver and with Triska between them. So he's got to push hard now. He is one of the few drivers left on circuit without a track limits penalty, so that will play into his hands. But unfortunately for him, Tom is also one of those drivers, as is Napple right behind them, as Vessel and Provatox go wheel to wheel further back. Nick and Fleddy as well. Nick getting through past the Mercedes driver up to P11. These two did manage to get ahead of the hard tyre train, and now they're looking to increase the gap and try and catch back up after they both had to replace their front wings. That's top 10 though, 3 seconds ahead, so a lot of work to do, but you know, if they keep battling the way they have been all race long, I'm sure Nick and Fleddy, if they work together, can close down that gap, as Triska gets himself a penalty now, and Alex Marciano comes out well behind Spicer after the pit stop. Look at this, 2 seconds, 2.1 seconds through turn 1. A lot of work to do for the championship leader now, but it's well, he is still in a net P1 thanks to the track limits penalty for Spicer, but Alex Marciano, and look at the undercut for the cars behind as well. So yeah, Alex Marciano now, he has to manage to push. He's got no DRS, no more friendly terms as they were in the first stint, and it's all about managing that gap now for the Aston Martin driver.
Well played, NLR Spicer. That undercut is maybe the best possible chance he could have given himself at this race win, by at least getting Alex Marciano out of that DRS and making him work for it. Let's see how that's going to unfold. Lolo moves past Suarez further back, who has still not pitted in this race. Tom, again, is going to follow through. Tom, I imagine, likewise with Alex Marciano trading with Spicer earlier, will be happy to do the same with the Ferrari in front, as Galaxy Slayer and Napple are really the threats to him at the moment, unless he, of course, himself picks up a track limit penalty. Galaxy Slayer laning up, goes to the inside, hitting into turn 15, another lunge into that corner and makes it work. Great move from Galaxy Slayer, and Lolo gets through on his teammate. Was there team orders then? Tom trying to get through, runs into the back. There was contact between the two cars and Tom is boxed in then, no way through. Going into turn 19 and Matisse in the way. Defending, he is working in the service of his teammate. Look at this. Lolo trying to get some separation. Tom switches to the inside, and then it's going to be a drag race towards turn 1. And yes, Matisse was on the overtake button too. He is not going to give this one up as they battle for the apex of turn 1. And Tom does get through with much, much fresher tyres, gets into position number 5 and manages to get around that bit of Ferrari team tactics, then moves into position number 5 and still has Lolo in front within his sights. Now he's still got to worry about Galaxy Slayer and Napple, but Tom's still in that frame, pushing for a podium place, and up front Alex Marciano has scythed away at Spicer's lead. Look at this, pretty much a full second on the last lap, and well, lap fresher tyres do make quite a bit of a difference, but Alex Marciano very, very duly closing down on NLR Spicer and reducing that undercut.
Whoa! Huge, huge contact between Galaxy Slayer, Napple and Triska. I'm not sure who got damaged, but I saw front wing flying off. There's nothing on my telemetry, so it might have just been visual, but they're going to go wheel to wheel again. Galaxy Slayer just ahead, but Napple and Matisse going wheel to wheel. The Ferrari driver still has not pitted, and Triska looking for the move at the next corner, turn 13. He goes for the inside, but it's going to be the outside for turn 15, not where you want to be unless you have the grip, but he is going to have that grip as Matisse still 18 laps on those hard tyres, and Triska gets ahead, but crucially 1 second now to Napple. He's got to push on to stay in range of his teammate, as Galaxy Slayer now, thanks to all of that, Matisse has done his job. Will he dive into the pits now? Yeah, he will, after defending so hard for his teammate. Great bit of attempted teamwork from the Ferraris, and it has worked to some extent. Tom has managed to get with Lolo, but Galaxy Slayer is 1.7 behind, and it's a real opportunity for Lolo and Tom to increase the gap to the cars behind and make themselves the favourites for P3 in this race. As well, Spyros is there as well, but he's on the hard tyres and he's going to be with severely depleted pace compared to these cars behind. And Lolo and Tom already catching up, and I'm sure Lolo is going to fly by with the DRS down to turn 12 now.
Absolutely, sets up for the exit, gets a nice punch off of turn 11, that hairpin, and is going to get through up ahead. We also have a change for the lead. Has Spicer's gamble failed? You would imagine it was his only chance at the race win without Alex Marciano getting a penalty, but Alex Marciano now leads, and Lolo and Tom sweep past TGS Spyros. Not much he can do about that, and he's just going to try and hang on in there with aging hard tyres to get to the end of this Grand Prix. You can see further back, whoa, Provatox was way off the road in the Kicksauber. Not sure what's happened then, is Nick fighting off Vessel and Fleddy through this last sector. There are no lunges then. These three guys have all been in the wars tonight as well, but have been detached too from the drivers in front. Have went for that undercut and are trying to come back, but with older tyres that's not going to be an easy task. Napple picks up a time penalty in the Alpine, as does Fleddy in the Mercedes again. There are only 4 drivers now in this race who do not have penalties for track limits infringements. How much could that shake up the order? We shall see. So Alex Marciano leads Spicer, Lolo, Tom, Spyros in P5, and Galaxy Slayer actually has managed to make up some of that deficit. Having Spyros in the gap could help with getting DRS here and getting himself up towards the two cars in front. So Galaxy Slayer not out of this third place battle yet, but he needs to time this move on Spyros and get through and try and make sure that gap to Tom does not exceed 1 second. But it doesn't look like Spyros is going to get DRS either here, because there's a detection point. So Galaxy Slayer is going to have a bit of a run. He is quite some way back at this stage. We'll see how this is going to unfold in the V-carb. Gets on an overtake button, opens up that rear wing. Half a second is the gap. They'll swap further up ahead too, trying to resist the comeback of Galaxy Slayer, who does have fresher tires, and he will have 5th place. So up ahead, Tom goes massively wide at turn 11.
Whoa.
Goes way over the track limits, rejoins, and that is just what Galaxy Slayer needed. Tom got through on Lolo down the straight, but too late on the brakes, maybe not adapting to the extra speed in, and Galaxy Slayer comes right back into it. They would have been just outside of range had Tom not made that mistake, but critically he has, and Galaxy Slayer now right back in that fight and staring down the McLaren, looking for that podium still.
Yeah, Tom will be really frustrated with that one as well. But I think one of the big things with all the track limits penalties, it's not just that everyone's on 3 seconds. I'm astonished by just how many time penalties have been in this race now. Because we've got 6 people on 6 seconds as Nick and I think that's Napple locking tyres all the way down the straight. Maybe a bit of retribution between the two. They're going wheel to wheel again, and Napple loses the rear into turn 1. But they were almost both in the wall several times. Napple's got half a front wing, so clearly something's gone on there. I just about missed it. I think I saw what was the afters, I think, between the two of them as Nick gets ahead. He's up to P9, but yeah, 6 seconds of penalties, and yeah, like I said, 6 drivers on 6 seconds, 8 drivers on 3, and then a couple drivers on even more, with Suarez on 12 and Vajmeranvi on 9, and surely more to come. There's still 7 laps to go in this race. Vajmeranvi getting his way past Lakitu for P12, but with 9 seconds of penalties, that's going to be tough. Tom gets his way into P3. Can Galaxy Slayer follow him past the Ferrari? Down the inside he goes into turn 11, and it's a great move from the V-carb up to P4, and he's now going to challenge Tom. Both of them with no penalties to their name. It's another one for Nick, meanwhile, as he's up to 9 seconds in the Williams as he goes wheel to wheel with Triska as well in this final sector. Down towards turn 15, it's Nick on the inside. Triska tries to follow through but has to yield, and the 2 Alpines still sitting behind that Williams. But Galaxy Slayer and Tom, this is the best battle on the circuit at the moment, because neither of them have time penalties. They've done fantastically well to keep it within the white lines all race long, and it's paid dividends as they're now the only ones really with a realistic chance of that last podium spot.
Oh, Ghost, I hope you have a drink next to you. I've just run out of water, so I hope we can survive these last few laps, because this has been manic. It has been unrelenting all the way through this Grand Prix of Kota, with Alex Marciano leading, still trading away with Spicer. Spicer now has 6 seconds of penalties, which is not going to cost him P2 because there's a gargantuan gap behind, but unless disaster strikes for Alex Marciano, the path to the victory looks fairly set in stone at this point for the man who took race victory last time out in Australia too, is Lolo at P5, who does have a lot of battery to use, so has some fighting potential in this 3rd place battle, but gets big oversteer heading out of turn number 11. Claws his way back towards the cars in front, but still has some work to do then, and has a time penalty. Now Nick moves through on Vessel further back, gets into position number 7. He needs to finish this race in the lowest possible time because of the penalties he has. Fleddy picks up another one though. He's also now on 9 seconds, but the 2 drivers behind him, Vajmeranvi and Lakitu, also have 9 seconds of penalties. It's extraordinary stuff. I don't think I've ever seen a league race at Kota with this many. It is a track where you can be susceptible to it, but even still, that is an extraordinary number of drivers who have exceeded those white lines too many times. But 3 out of the top 4 are still clean. That's excellent work from those guys. But yeah, I do think this 3rd place battle may well be the main attraction of the closing laps of this Grand Prix. Tom and Galaxy Slayer, of course, I do not know myself how many warnings these guys may have. Tom leading away from Galaxy Slayer. They're very close on battery. This 3rd place battle, well, it's anyone's guess at this point.
Yeah, just look at these time penalties. It's ridiculous. I mean, we can cover the action on track, and we can say who's ahead on track, but I mean, good luck working out who's going to finish where at the moment. Because I think it would take you more than 5 laps, and by then all the positions are going to be different anyway.
And
but,
the penalties.
Yeah, Nappel getting past his teammate in the meantime, and Fleddy trying to make his way through. I think a mistake from Triska probably at the start of Sector 2 here, and he goes very deep through turn 11, gets lights up the rears as well as he gets back on the circuit, and he's down to P11. We've got yellow flags. That is the Haas of Suarez round in Sector 2. Meanwhile, just before turn 10, Fleddy and Nappel once again swapping places. Nappel into the back of him though, or sorry, Triska now down to P11. And Nappel back up into the top 10. He's only got 3 seconds of penalties, so at the moment he's looking at a decent points-paying position, possibly P7 for the Alpine driver of Nappel. But yeah, it is chaos in terms of penalties out there. And yeah, I agree. I haven't seen a race, particularly at this level of skill, with this many time penalties for track limits. And that's not to say anything bad about the drivers, because it's so hard to go around the circuit without getting penalties for track limits. But it's yeah, it's certainly interesting. I think it more speaks to how close the racing has been. Everyone is on the limit out there, and it's really showing not only in the racing that we're seeing, but also in the time penalties on the board.
And still it continues inside now the final 4 laps of this Grand Prix. It has been epic all the way through. I am exhausted, I'm sure you are too. It has been extraordinary stuff, and we are now coming towards the conclusion. Tom and Galaxy Slayer, I mentioned this could be the main attraction. These guys are not running all out just yet. They have charged up their batteries for what is sure to be a furious fight in the last couple of laps. Galaxy Slayer closing down Tom now, is going to draw level down the straight. Tom's not going to defend it off, of course. They do have to be wary of Lolo behind. He does have older tires and he does have a time penalty, but he is still someone that can interfere in his own way in this battle, so keep an eye out for Lolo if he can try and get involved. But Galaxy Slayer moves into this 3rd place, but there was no use of the overtake button from neither him nor Tom. It seems as though these guys are, after the relentless action of the rest of the race, seemingly in a bit more of a game of cat and mouse a la Alex Marciano and Spicer. They are just biding their time, waiting their moment and not getting impatient. They are waiting for, surely I imagine, a scrap in the last lap or 2 of this race when it really matters. But Galaxy Slayer and Tom, for once I could say in this race, something of a calm before the storm in that 3rd place battle.
Well, you mentioned that you weren't sure how many warnings there were on. Well, we could yet have more drama, Daka, because Galaxy Slayer and Tom have both been on 2 warnings since fairly early in this race, pre-lap 10 I think it was. Both of them have been driving around with 2 warnings, so they're right on the edge here. Lolo is there. If either of them get a penalty, then the Ferrari driver is going to be back in this race for the podium, or at least for the top 4, because at the moment he's very comfortable in 5th. He's perfectly happy staying in the DRS of these 2 and watching them fight, because he knows they're not really going to be interested in where he is. They're more interested in each other, and if they both take each other out or give each other time penalties, then Lolo's going to be there, as Tom now sends his way down the inside of the VCARB driver up to P3, and the Spaniard's going to have to find another opportunity to get through in these last 2.5 laps. Triska and Nappel as well. The 2 Alpines have been at it for a few laps now, and it's Triska now who's ahead, but Nappel's still with the penalty advantage. He's only on 3 seconds. Fleddy on 9, Nick on 9, Triska on 6. So yeah, Nappel's at least looking at P8 here, and he could manage to get P7 with Vessel on 6 seconds as well, but I think maybe that's a little too far up the road. It's very close.
Impressive that you're still trying to do the maths in your head after what we've seen. That it is so complex. I think we will wait to see the game reshuffle the order after these guys all come over the line now. 2 laps to go at Kota, with Alex Marciano leading, and well, it's on track, not leading comfortably but with no penalties, and Spicer with 2 at 6 seconds in total. That swings things massively in favour of the Aston Martin. I'm sure that Spicer will want to win this, at least on track, to have that going for a bit of well, just something to take away from this race other than the championship points in the slipstream now. But these guys, it's been a remarkably civil battle for the lead. There have been obviously a lot of overtakes, but none they haven't really got into it, it must be said, but I think that Spicer is going to wait and I think will try and win this on track at least on that last lap following Alex Marciano through. Galaxy Slayer is going to get through on Tom and now starting to burn that battery. Used quite a lot of it on that main straight to get into position number 3 and claim the upper hand at least temporarily. Now, can he gap Tom enough before the next time they head down that straight the McLaren could be threatening? We shall see. Lolo in there as well, as you mentioned, just there to try and pick up the pieces. Looks like Galaxy Slayer is trying to make something of a break. Tom made a couple of errors in turn 15, has managed to hang on though, and we will have a fight for that third position on the final lap. It's been a race with battles, with constant time penalties. 1 lap to go at Kota. How could it unfold?
It's a strange decision, I have to say, from Galaxy Slayer to burn the ERS to get through on the penultimate lap when Tom is going to have the final lap to go for it. He's going to drain everything he's got down to turn 12, I'm sure, with Galaxy Slayer there. They're 14 seconds behind the top 2, so it's all about this battle for third as Tom is just going to follow through this first sector and the beginning of the second, and it's going to be down to turn 12 where the fireworks are going to start. Lolo is there as well. If anything goes wrong, he will pick up an unlikely podium, but he's had a brilliant debut race. Mistake from Galaxy Slayer, and this has brought Lolo right
trying to give him DRS.
All to there. Tom is there, and oh goodness me, they're playing DRS games. You're absolutely right. Lolo's gone through, but is Tom going to get the DRS now? Galaxy Slayer down the inside. It's all about these two, but they could be architects of their own downfall because Lolo's in front, and if it all goes wrong, he'll pick it up. But here they go, down towards turn 12, they're side by side, they're 3 wide into turn 12, surely the Ferrari yields, and he does. Galaxy Slayer down the inside, but Tom is not finished yet. He gets the switch back on him on the exit, round the outside he goes into this final sector now. They're still side by side, losing a loss of the rear for the V-Carb. He sends down the inside, there's contact, and that's a little bit dodgy, you have to say, but that's a matter for the stewards, and I'm sure Tom won't report if he does manage to secure P3. Alex Marciano wins the race with Spicer behind, but we're focused on this battle for third, and it's Tom ahead. Is Galaxy Slayer going to send it into the final corner, or is he going to try and get a switch back? He does, but he can't get the grip, and it's Tom who secures a double podium for McLaren. What a brilliant battle there on the final lap. They were both absolutely going for it, just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at each other, and it was Tom who came out on top. Wow, brilliant stuff.
Wow, that was a stunning battle on the final lap between those two. It did get a little over the line at turn 15, but I think just about all fair. Fleddy, says he's DNF. Don't know what's happened. He does. I think he did come over the line, but
yeah, it's a bug. Don't worry. If if they leave before the race ends, then the game sometimes just DNFs them.
So we wait for the last drivers to come over the line. Slash, Geppo, then Suarez and Provatox. Was looking very promising for the Kick Sauber driver earlier, but in the end is going to settle for last place in the end, 20th. We didn't get much time to talk about the race winner, Alex Marciano. Once again, did run pretty much the entire race with Spicer. Spicer gambled on an undercut then, but Alex Marciano very, very quickly clawed that gap back and wins it on track as well as on penalties. So Spicer having to settle for second. I think he'll be pleased after how last week went, but Alex Marciano continues to look pretty much unbeatable. NLR Tom was given driver of the day by the game, and I think that is extremely well deserved. And another podium at 2 to add to his tally. Got one in Australia too. So wonderful start to the season for the PSF5 champion of season 37. But yes, let's wrap things up in the results. Alex Marciano takes the win from the Austrian NLR Spicer. Penalties in the end really holding him back in what could have been an epic fight for the win. Tom, after a monumental battle with Galaxy Slayer on the final lap, goes from 14th to 3rd. What a stunning drive that was. Lolo in the end was unable to quite take advantage. Looked like he may at one point because they were banging wheels down that back straight, but does in the end come through in 5th place out of Spyros and 6th with a good run run on the alternate strategy. Next comes Vessel and Napel, Triska from 19th to 9th, and Nick rounding out the top 10 after a tumultuous race, it must be said, just ahead of Matisse in the end from Weimaranvi, Lakitu, Zvajdek, Moikuli, Slash, Geppo, Suarez, Provatox, and Fleddy. Provatox does take away the fastest lap, so we can finally say that Alex Marciano is not on max points at this stage of the season, but still very comfortably will be out in front, I believe, on 35 points. I imagine that Tom will be in second place, but some way back on what will be 20 points. So that is the second round in the books. I am exhausted. I'm sure you are exhausted as well, Ghost. That was, yeah, a race of no breaks, it must be said, in the action. There was
Yes.
just, and my brain was working overtime throughout the duration of that Grand Prix.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's great to see in the paddock as well. Tom and Galaxy Slayer both giving each other GGs and saying it was a great fight. So no harm done with that little bit of contact at turn 15. So well done to both of them. They really put on the spectacle in the last few laps there for us. So thanks very much to Tom and Galaxy Slayer. So well done to everyone though. No DNFs at Kota, by the way. Full grid, not a single driver failing to finish. So that's absolutely brilliant standard. I know we had a lot of time penalties, but to have 20 drivers cross the line at such a difficult track in a 50% race is fairly impressive. So well done, PSF3. And yeah, may there be more of that to come. But Alex Marciano, just unbeatable so far, and I'm struggling to see at the moment. It's only been 2 rounds. Maybe they're both tracks that he's very good at, but it's going to be more and more difficult to justify that the more times he wins over the coming weeks. So is he going to be unstoppable this season? We'll have to see. I'm sure Spicer can give him more runs for his money, but he's got to keep it within the white lines.
Yeah, ultimately, Spicer has been a threat to Alex Marciano in both the opening rounds, but just a couple of errors. Not quite having the consistency of Alex Marciano that has really set that apart. I do not think Alex is going to run away with every round this season, but certainly looks like a very difficult driver to beat. But I think that is just about going to wrap things up for the second round of season 38 PSF3. Thank you to all of our drivers. Once again, thank you to our sponsors, GT Omega and Sim Racing Centre. Make sure to look in the descriptions for links to their sites. And if you want to buy anything, you can get your discounts at checkout using the code PSGL. Looking ahead to next week, that is going to come to you from the Belgian Grand Prix, the legendary Spa-Francorchamps circuit. So make sure to tune into that one, because this PSF3 grid, as you saw tonight, they are absolutely bonkers, and we've seen some incredible wheel-to-wheel moments in the opening rounds so far. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Ghost, for being alongside me, and well, until next time, we'll see you later.